To start laying down strands, we'll be going back and forth between the attribute editor and the tool settings. So let's start by selecting the groom node and activate the groom tool by going up to the Yeti shelf and hit the groom button. This will load the Yeti groom settings in the tool settings. So we have the general brush attributes, Yeti's different brushes or groom tools, as well as our attribute paint tools and workflow tools. So to lay down strands, let's select the add brush and start clicking away on the mesh. If you notice, it creates a lot of strands at a time. By turning on wireframe mode, we can see that it creates strands at the vertex points of the mesh. Let's go ahead and remove these by selecting the delete brush and run the brush across the surface to remove the strands that we don't want. Or we can use one of Yeti's workflow tools if we go to the tool settings and select the fill tool. What this tool does is apply the active brush across the entire surface. Since we have the delete brush selected and we hit the fill button, it'll delete all the strands on the surface. So let's go back to the add brush, jump over to the attribute editor, and under strands, we'll see an option to populate at mesh points. Let's turn that off. And now as we start laying down new strands, it'll allow us to place strands on any part of the surface. So let's go ahead and clear away these strands. Now the initial length of the strand can be adjusted in the attribute editor. By default, the initial length is 1, so new strands will be 1 unit long. If we set this to 5, new strands will be 5 units long. Another option that we have under the strand attributes is conform new strands. If we activate this option, when we place a new strand, it'll average the size, shape, and direction of the strand based on the strands already placed on the surface. Another attribute that we will be using is the strand segment length. This is a distance between segment points. So if we go down to the display section and we turn on display length segments, we can see the points along the strand. So if we want to adjust the number of points on the strand, we have to change the length between strand points. By default, it's set to 0.1. So if we set it to 1 and resample, you may notice that the points are now 1 unit of measure apart. So if we want to increase the number of points along the strands, you want to drop the value to say 0.5 and resample. And now you can see that the distance between points is a little shorter, giving us more points along the strand. So let's set the strand segment length to 0.01 and resample, and this should give us a lot more points than we need for now. So let's set this to 0.5 and resample, and this should give us enough points to work with.